Hello, hello, hello.
Hello.
Welcome to Pop of Color Live, a music industry late show for colorful bands and artists. My name is Clara Charron. I am your host, and you'll see that we have a new location today. We have upgraded because this is my first ever special guest, Joel.
Hello.
Best known as the frontman of Jumpin, Joel Flash and the Magic Machine.
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you for having me, Clara. It is lovely
Cheers.
to be here. Oh, yes, cheers.
Cheers. Joel is going to be talking about his astounding networking skills tonight.
Very good networking skills.
But first of all, we're gonna talk about the music industry news of the week. We have 2 weeks worth because hey, Louise is here. Anyway, we have 2 weeks worth because I was off last week because we were both at the Ottawa Music Industry Coalition AGM.
That's right.
Joel, do you want to share your big news?
I was elected to the Ottawa Music Industry Coalition's board of directors. My third time going out for it, so I guess third time's a charm when it comes to not-for-profit governance.
Congratulations on the spot. Hi, Spencer. Thanks for tuning in.
Hi, Spencer.
Okay, news. First of all, Twitter. You might have got, if you have a Twitter account, you probably got this email, but for those of you who get way too many emails, the Twitter team discovered a bug in their password encryption in software, which means it's possible for your password to be discoverable and unencrypted. There has been no breach, no hacking discovered, but for safety precaution, they recommend you change your password and maybe install an extra layer of security, such as a backup phone to send the code to for every time a new device logs in.
It's kind of a good rule of thumb in general. Change your passwords every once in a while.
Don't use the same one for everything.
Don't use the same one for everything. Common dumb mistake.
Okay, second piece of news out of 3 is Billboard has changed their streaming counts to qualify for sales. So as you know, since they've started including streaming, whether it be for on-demand streaming such as Apple Music and Spotify, whether it be not passive streaming like Pandora or video streaming like YouTube, they don't count exactly for a sale such as if you would buy the single, say off the iTunes store, or as part of buying a physical album. Therefore, they've been fluctuating with how they're going to count them, and they have come up with a new system. So it used to be 1,500 streams equals 1 sale for counting chart positions, but now, the new change is for paid subscription streams, it would be 1,250, so less. So 1,250 streams if you pay for a streaming service equals 1 sale. The big change that lots of people were covering this story though is they also changed the unpaid streams. So now instead of 1,500, it's 3,750 unpaid streams to equal 1 sale. This means that paid streams are worth 3 times more than unpaid streams.
Wow.
When it comes to how much they're worth in sales for not just chart ranking, but also gold, platinum statuses, sales figures. I think it's pretty interesting to note because, of course, one of the biggest issues with streaming not paying much is because lots of people are using the freemium, the basic service that is ad-supported. Yeah. But the songwriters and the performers don't get paid as much. They don't see the royalties.
So in this way, we will be seeing less for unpaid and more for paid, or do you think it will just sort of even the playing field at the end?
I think this would be a really good chance and it's because everyone's saying we need to educate music fans, and that the only way we get paid and one way to support us is by paying $10 a month for Apple Music or Spotify. I also think it's interesting to So I think it's interesting to check by genre, because certain genres and certain demographics are more likely to pay for streaming versus not pay for streaming. So for example, paid streams, chances are it would be older people. Well, so if they're not quite, if they don't quite buy CDs anymore, but they're looking to looking to get music because their darn new computer doesn't have a CD player. What do now? They're likely to pay for something Apple Music style because it's close to the iTunes store. So older genres, genres that appeal to older people might chart more. So I'm thinking the easy listening, adult alternative, if traditional country music, perhaps classical, vocalist.
And I guess as people age, you're going to see a shift in that, right? Like all of a sudden, 90s streams are going to become more paid for and so forth. What about corporate accounts? I'd imagine that they would be paying.
Yeah, because they need to pay. They need to pay for, say, a Spotify for Business account to have their corporate playlist. So, say a retail location like Walmart, they pay for Spotify for Business because that clears all the licensing with the performing rights organizations and the tracks in real time, so they don't have some poor administrator in the back room doing the calculations at the end of the year for SOCAN or ASCAP or BMI.
It's a lot of math.
Another thing that might be really interesting to note for people who pay for subscriptions would be big fans of indie artists. Because if they don't buy, if these are the people who go to local shows, they might be buying CDs, they might be buying vinyl, but they also might be because they value music, they're willing to pay for it to have it on demand, in quality formats.
That's an interesting concept, and I think like on the offline version of that, like I'm much more apt to buy a CD, for example, of a local band than I would of someone from out of town, for example. So I think that in the indie scene, you'd have that type of community feeling as well, but also maybe on the local scene. I wonder how targeted Spotify and all these streaming services can get.
Do you think that if then unpaid streams are worth a lot less than paid streams and then a lot less in sales, this will help indie artists and help small independent artists whose fans primarily buy their CDs? They might have smaller numbers, but now they're worth so much more.
It's hard to say without knowing how many streams are done, like through premium accounts versus non-premium accounts, right? If it turns out that many, like it just comes out in the wash, and where, we changed it up to 37, what have you, because that many more people are streaming free, then, it could just come out to be evened out. But eventually there's going to be a pushback from the creative community if, they're not getting paid for their work. So. Yeah,
another thing with the unpaid, for now, the people who are more likely to not pay for streaming would be the kids. So hooray, this hopefully means there's no more Jake Paul's going platinum, because all their kids are streaming off YouTube. No one is buying his single, hopefully. They're just streaming it off YouTube, and sheer numbers we're gaming the system and getting him to go platinum. Not cool. But this would also perhaps mean people with less discretionary income who can't afford a premium subscription might have their voices less heard when it comes to what's popular. Do you think that's going to affect certain genres? I'm trying to think I'm thinking classical music might be preferred by like higher class, less wealthier socioeconomic statuses. Well,
you could also
classical music.
Like it just could come down to a difference in targeting, right? So like classical music, for example, or like let's say like those classic type styles like opera and that type of thing. Broadway, like that type of thing is still like in education, for example, like you're talking music schools, right? They would be listening to a lot of that. And they're like, I think all genres should be mixing more anyway. So, I think definitely, like, when it comes to genres, you're going to be seeing more streams than others in free versus paid.
Of course, free.
Yeah, free, right? Whatever's new and hip is going to be, like, and not hip enough to be monetized yet, though that's where you're going to be seeing a lot of
something like the latest SoundCloud remixers would have, like, unpaid streaming as their main source.
Exactly. And then as soon as something is big enough to be monetized, that's where you're going to be seeing it stuck behind paywalls and things like that.
True. And last piece of news of the week, iconic guitar manufacturer Gibson has filed for bankruptcy protection.
Crummy. That's too bad. That's too bad.
Do I detect a hint of attitude with that?
No, well, I mean, like, it's you see it with these sort of legacy, and we were talking about this earlier, these legacy brands, right? Eventually something new comes along, something changes the marketplace. With Gibson, Gibson and Fender used to be the only like big names in town. And with a global marketplace, that just isn't the case anymore. There's hundreds and probably thousands of different guitar makers, and there's people all over the world making their own music, using those. They're reviewing them on their own, saying, yes, I am, an ex-guitarist, and this particular brand, although you might not know of it, is fantastic, and here's why. There's more choice, and when there's more choice, legacy brands suffer. Always.
Hey, Leonard, what were you saying about the motorcycle?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
so,
it's also true to branding, because Gibson, they're iconically known for like the blues rock kind of sound, and they were straying further away from that by trying to get into like consumer electronics or innovate with self-tuning guitars, and that's my cat making a ruckus.
It's happened all the time in many different industries, but so Gibson should have stuck to what they did best, right? We make Gibson guitars. These are what they're all about. We're great at it, and instead they tried to expand their business into markets that they weren't as familiar with. And it's a gamble. It could have worked, but it didn't. Like I use the example of Harley Davidson. Harley Davidson doesn't make e-bikes, at least I don't think they do, because that's not Harley Davidson, right? Harley Davidson is another one of those legacy brands that used to be they were the only motorcycle company around, or at least the one that everyone would know, and that's not how it is anymore.
Hi, Leonard. Nice to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Leonard, by the way, runs Indie Band Coach out of California. He's really cool.
Hi, Leonard. Hello.
Hey, so Joel, let's talk about networking. Okay. Now to your feature as my first ever special guest on Pop of Color Live. What is networking anyway?
Well, networking is literally just meeting people. That's all it is. It's organized connection making among people with a shared interest for mutual benefit. It's really professional networking is no different than social networking. We do this ourselves as humans, right? We put each other into groups of, sports teams. We're all fans of bands. Music is the great example of that. We go to these networking events and we all have a shared interest, this particular artist or performance in general or whatever. There's two main types of networking events that people should be aware of. Now, there are offline events, so this is not on the internet, not on Facebook Live, although sometimes they are.
IRL.
IRL, exactly.
Maybe IRL.
So you're talking like conferences, trade shows, mixers, youth fairs, dinners, galas, there's all kinds of different names for them, but the whole point is people shared interests, getting together and meeting. And then there's associations. So OMIC is one of those, right? These are organized groups, again, offline, but they do have online presences always, specifically to gather people around the shared interests. And they could be called a coalition, a guild, a college, a fraternity, a society. And typically there's a fee structure and extra benefits like, online networking opportunities or a certain amount of events per year or that type of thing. And I should mention, like Facebook Live, this too is another type of networking event, right?
Hi, everyone.
Because anybody listening into this or liking can see everybody else that is doing so as well, and right away you know that, oh, okay, this person is also interested in X, maybe we should network, right?
Yeah, go talk to each other in the comments.
Go talk to each other.
It'll help our engagement rate too. Thanks, guys.
And actually, I have a lot of experience in online networking as well, specifically with webinars, and they do work. LinkedIn is using it to a great degree, meetup.com, for example, but the best networking, and even LinkedIn and meetup.com know this, is in-person interaction, because we're humans and we need that social love so much. Do you want to know what makes me such an expert about networking?
What makes you such an expert about networking, Joel?
I sold networking events for 10 years. I worked for the Conference Board of Canada, which does conferences, obviously, but also a lot of economic research and human resources research into many things. I've been to more conferences than I ever care to think about again. And I told myself, actually, that when I quit my job, I would never do it again. Never go to a conference, just stomp my feet. But here I am, going to all kinds of music conferences anyway.
I'm glad I met you through them, though.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. We met networking. That's how it happens. Now, I suppose now you'll want to ask me, why should anyone care about networking?
why on earth should we care about networking?
That's a good question, Clara, and I'm glad you asked.
I'm glad I asked too.
Because the Conference Board is an economic think tank, but it does research on literally every industry in the country. Not music, but it doesn't matter. Every industry works exactly the same way to get people interested in what you're doing, what you're selling, in this case, your music, that's your product. And you, as a brand, if you want people to be interested in you, they have to know you, and they have to see you, and they have to meet you. It's important to network at your shows, right? Like, so that your shows are networking events as well.
Go talk to your fans.
Exactly.
For goodness sakes, don't just hide behind like your merch table or with your buddies in the dressing room after.
That's bad.
Yeah. Go talk to the fans. Go bring them to the merch table. Go say hi. Thank them individually for coming.
Particularly the ones that you know are there to see you. Like if you see the same faces at your shows, go meet them. Because they're going to tell everybody about how the band knows them, blah, blah, blah. That's networking. That's building a fan base. And it shouldn't be just at your shows either. Like, I've been playing in bands in town here for about 15 years as well. And I'd see a lot of the same faces at my own shows, but I'd also be going to a lot of other shows and seeing those same faces again. And it's one of those common marketing things, 3-touch type of thing. No one's going to trust you or want to do
invest
in you. In this case, invest the time or money to listen to your music. They're not going to want to do that unless they know you. And typically that takes 3 touches, right? I see you there. I see you there. Now we've met. Now I trust you, and I'm going to buy your music. Maybe. That's not.
Maybe you should talk to them first. But...
Yeah, talk to them first. That's not a guarantee. But all business is built on it, and so. If you're not out there at shows, then that doesn't mean partying. You don't need to go out and party, right? And I'll get into that a bit.
Hey, Daniel.
As part of bad practices, let's say, but just going, the FaceTime, going to a number of the networking events that are happening in Ottawa. It seems like there's more and more happening for the arts all the time, which is fantastic. But you should go to them. Mm-hmm. Now, suppose next you're going to ask me, Clara, that it's networking just sounds kind of sleazy and salesy.
I mean, there's ways to do it, but when people, especially like the creative artists who are the type to read my work because they don't really understand business and they want to learn, but no matter how excited you are to learn, there's still like something in the back of your mind that goes, networking events is just a bunch of people in suits over at the shrimp table, like exchanging business cards and shaking hands really stuffily.
That's a lot of That's a lot of conferences. Yeah, that's exactly what they're like. I used to do a lot of risk management conferences, and that's exactly what they're like.
With the shrimp?
There's sometimes shrimp. Mostly it was chicken. It was mostly chicken. But, chicken's, everyone can eat chicken kind of thing. Or, insert muffin here. But, it doesn't, the first conference I went to was the most boring thing I'd ever seen in my life. And because I'm a marketer, I'm not a risk manager. And I thought, oh my God, do I have to sell these? Oh my God. But, talk to people afterwards. They loved it. The risk managers loved it. Because that's their jam, right? You gather a bunch of people in a room and they all have the same jam. It's perfect for meeting peeps. And it doesn't have to be salesy and schmarmy just because it's organized. I've seen it be sleazy, but there's a difference between a sales event, like a trade show, right? Where that's the point, right? Everybody's got booths and you're selling things. So yeah, of course it's salesy and yeah, I want to sell you things and so forth. That's different. That's an event built around the idea of sales with networking as an added benefit, right? So there are networking events and mixers at trade shows, but that's not the main point of them. Whereas a networking event proper is literally just built for that. Maybe there's a presentation, the OMIC events are a great example of it.
Yeah,
right?
You'd look pretty sleazy if you went around handing out brochures and discount cards to everyone in the bar. It's
not cool. Never do that. And that's actually one of my big do nots of networking.
We'll get to that. I'm so excited.
But another great way to think about it, and if you don't know, right, if you're at a sales meeting versus that, sales meetings typically benefit individuals or small groups, right? a number of them, depending on the size of it, like some of these big trade shows in Vegas. Vegas is where all the most gigantic trade shows are because they have a gigantic amount of trade show space. It's wild, and like thousands and thousands and thousands of people go through these things in the course of a few days. So in those situations, you're going to have a number of individual or small group sales, right? A lot of success in pockets. Whereas a networking event, particularly one around a smaller community, that has a community benefit, right? We're all here, we're all meeting each other.
We're all in this together.
And yes, individual collaborations will happen, but within a community, those individual collaborations benefit all, right? And the main thing that you need to remember, this is very important out there in Facebook Live land, networking events, everybody is there for the exact same reason, to meet other people. So if you're there and you think, oh my God, I'm so nervous, I don't know how to talk to people, they don't want to talk to me. Yes, they do. People are there to meet other people who have the same jam. Go tell them about your jam. If you see a group of people yik-yakking, just insert yourself. Hey, you know, oftentimes there's name tags at these things. So you don't even have to, you just point like, that's me, hey, and then you join the combo.
If you're shyer, find a wallflower and compliment something about them.
Exactly, but that's a really good idea. If you're shy, go see someone else who's standing by themselves.
Well, then you two can stick together and then go take on the rest of the group together, rest of the event together.
Exactly. Before we get into do's and don'ts, really networking is the whole point of it. Is that it builds community. You know, individual meetings between people, and this is what typically happens in sales things, because with sales there's always commission, which always leads to bias, right? Mm-hmm. So these individual sales, these individual meetings, and depending on what's being discussed, depending on what's, they could have greater impact on the wider community. But most often they don't, because they're for individual, contracts or X company and X company. It doesn't benefit the group. It benefits these two people or these two individuals in silos.
Yeah.
So that's why these associations exist, like OMAG, the one that we have here. But there's associations for everything. I met.
That is my cat.
I like this interview. I met, while you go get the cat, I will go get the cat. The president, I've met her twice now, the president of the Canadian Kitchen Cabinets Association. And she was the sole proprietor of said association, but had like thousands of members. Doesn't matter what your niche is or niche, doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter, like in this case, we could drill down to music industry. You could drill down to genre within music industry. You could drill down to genre within X geographic area within X music industry. You can always find an association. You can always find a group of people who have your jam and want to talk about it and meet you for added benefit. Always. Lovely kitty cat. Really, really, truly adding to the conversation, I feel.
She'll be great for the Facebook views and likes.
Now, Clara, would you like to know some of the do's or don'ts?
Oh, I love do's and don'ts. Let's do it. Let's do's and don'ts it. So
before I give you do's and don'ts, figure out some networking events that you can go to around you. In Ottawa, I'll be sure to share some when I share this as well, and I'm sure Clara will as well.
I have Joel's social media links and web links in the description. I never know which side it's on of this video. So yeah, go check him out. He's very active in the local community, so see him there. Other than that, I'm sure your area has one because we have people all over the world who tune in.
Mm-hmm. Seriously, if you want fun, just insert random industry, insert geography, insert association, hit Google. I guarantee you will find something. There's a Goat Fanciers Association.
Huh.
Do's and don'ts of networking.
Now on to do's and don'ts.
Networking, it seems like it's a great big hassle. It's like people really know what they're doing in these things, and some people do. I really know what I'm doing but I don't want to. It was just my job. I had to do it. So, but I've always I've been to so many conferences, and people make the same mistakes over and over and over again, and they don't get the most out of the event that they could.
How could they? Like,
well, I will tell you.
I'm glad, because this is why I brought you here.
First and foremost, do your research, right? So before an event, and actually I've got a present for you before I leave. Before an event, you can find out a whole lot about what's going to be happening, right? Like, so you can check the agenda, obviously, right? So we're going to see what we're going to learn about, blah, blah, blah. But you're also going to see who the speakers are, where they work, you know, and you can check on LinkedIn where they went to school. How do you know them? Do you have some sort of connection to them? If you can know all you can about the speaker and the topic before you ever show up, then that's a lot less figuring out that you have to do on site. Much more time you have to take in the content itself, as well as network with other people, because you're already there.
Yeah, bigger conferences too, like Canadian Music Week, they post the pictures of the delegates and links to their website and a little bit about them.
Absolutely.
Too, so you can make like a hit list of all the people you want to talk to.
Hit list. Oh my
Well, isn't
God.
that what politicians call it when they go to like fancy parties to like raise money and stuff? They make like a list of all the people they want to hit up.
Yes.
Should I call it the hit up list?
The hit up list.
The hit up list, not the hit list. Sorry, guys.
That's actually that's
Hi, Veronica.
That's a great segue into another tip is check that attendee list. Not every event is going to have one, because sometimes, depending on the event, there's privacy reasons. Certainly at the conference board, we wouldn't publish our attendee list.
Okay, well, what about Facebook events? You can usually see the people who are interested in coming.
Absolutely. So when it comes to a Facebook event,
all your mutual friends,
check out who else is there.
Nice.
If it's a meetup.com event, you'll be able to see that attendee list. But a lot of conferences do have an attendee list, or at least an organization attendee list. So if it's a local event and you take a look, oh, these 100 organizations are coming, typically, you know, in a smaller market, you'll be able to figure out who's going to be from where. And even if you can't, you know that those organizations are going to be there, and you'll be able to target them when you get there. Finally, when it comes to doing research, check those organizers and sponsors as well. So whoever's putting on the event, who are they? What are they all about? Who are the sponsors? Why are they sponsoring the event, right? What are they getting out of it? And sponsors will always have someone on site, so if you want to know, just go ask. Here's another tip, and I showed you this when we were at Megaphono as well.
It was brilliant. Yeah, forever crediting you for that.
So organize your socials. So some events, depending again on the resources and how many people will be attending, may put out a great list of social media beforehand. So they may have already organized all the speakers, social medias where applicable, the sponsors, the organizers, maybe even the attendees, if the attendees have agreed to, share that stuff. If you can find all that stuff ahead of time, then you already have those connections to those people. So if you meet them at the event and you say, hey, let's connect, there's not a lot of fumbling about. There isn't a chance for misconnection. You have it. You're ready to go. It's also good for getting your face out there to the organizers, because if you're sitting there at the event tweeting, using the official hashtags, using the organization's
tagging the organization's name,
exactly,
tagging the event,
tagging the speaker, tagging whatever. If you're active and engaged in that, you're going to all of a sudden be a lot more visible to the people putting on the event, and you're just further networking yourself. Imagine.
So what you did at Megaphono was you couldn't find a list. All we had was like the little booklet of the names of the speakers. So what you did was you created like an Excel spread. It was in Google. It was a Google spreadsheet sheet using Docs. And what you did was you made one manually, filling in the names of all the delegates and the speakers. There's and their socials, their website, where they were from, wasn't it? I think their country. Anyway, and then you just share that around to anyone who was interested. So I went off and I found all the music journalists and I just followed them all on Twitter.
Yeah, and like it takes some time. Like again, depending on the size of the event, Megaphono was a 2-3 day event with quite a few panels, quite a few speakers. So it took quite a bit of time to sort of set it up and do research, but you know what?
He was my hero.
Throw on a YouTube video and just sit there and hammer out finding the Instagrams, finding whatever.
Listen to music of the bands that are going to play that you're not sure if you want to check out yet.
Do whatever you need to do. Taking that time and having something like that, whatever tool works for you to organize yourself beforehand, it's a godsend, because you can just social share, done, you're connected. Here's some more handy tips. Show up early. That seems like a no-brainer, right? But if you get to the event a little early, you get a lay of the land before everyone else gets there, right? Sure. You're not necessarily going to be able to get into the presentation space or what have you, but there's always a foyer, there's a registration desk, and like if an event starts at 8 a.m., for example, the registration desk is going to be a madhouse. So if you get there 10-2 or even a little earlier, you're more relaxed, you've got your badge, you've got your stuff, you are seeing people coming in the door for not for a hit list, for a hit up list. There you go.
You can figure out where the bathrooms and the coat rack are beforehand and then show people.
Oh my goodness.
Who are there. That's what I was doing at Megaphone. I found the bathroom and I found the coat rack by myself. So then when delegates were coming in asking because they just arrived to Ottawa, to the Metcalfe Hotel, I was showing them. So I became like little mini hotel tour guide.
Wow.
Right? And introducing myself along the way. We had our badges on, so
you might get hired by the Metcalfe. Listen to the presentation. That seems like a no-brainer as well. But like oftentimes, I've encountered people where they go to an event and the presentation's on, and they think, oh well, I know all this, I don't need to listen. That's again, everybody's here for the same reason. If you're not listening and everyone knows it, I mean, there's a difference between checking your phone while a presentation's on and full on not listening and not engaging. It doesn't matter if you know it all or if you think you know it all. You're going to learn something, one, and two, no one knows everything about anything. So sit down, suck it up.
Be humble.
Be humble. If you know it all, great. But whatever.
But you weren't asked to go talk up there, so
no kidding.
Squish it.
And like, again, if you know it all, then go talk to the speaker afterwards, because clearly you guys are peers and could have things to talk about. Listen to the presentation, because it's rude not to. Dress for the audience. This, at the conferences that I sold, they were professional events, right? So you'd show up in a suit, or like you'd show up in business attire. If you're in the music industry, it's not always the same thing, right? Like if you go to an event, you're going to see people, like there's going to be some people wearing dress clothes, but there's also going to be a lot of people just not wearing things you should be wearing in public. So
on brand.
On brand. So stay on brand, but also recognize that it's not a show, right? So don't show up in your show gear. Show up in
what? I can't wear my like glittery Elvis.
I mean, you could, but no one's going to want to network with you. They're going to think that you're there to sell yourself, right?
Ooh,
and it's
true.
Absolutely miles. So show up, dress for the event. Like if it's biz cash, show up in business casual. Act like everybody else. If you try to stand out, it's not always a good
thing. There's a good way to stand out by being the nicest one there.
Exactly.
But you want to stand out like quietly, not like causing a scene.
That's right. Or by showing people where the coat racks are. Like that's a good way to stand out too.
Yeah, just stand out and make a little difference to people individually, one by one, not by like trying to impress a huge crowd.
Just a couple more do's. Do move around. This is something that is a common mistake. So like if you go to an event and it's all day and there's tables, like if you show up at 8 a.m. for the first talk or what have you, don't stay in that same spot all day long. The point of these events is to meet and network with people. So if you're at a table for one talk, move to another one, meet a whole new group of people for the second one, right? If you stake out a spot and don't move, you're just simply not going to get as much out of the event as you can.
True.
And finally, stay for the reception. So oftentimes there's a reception after these things, particularly if they're a conference that goes all day. I went to a conference actually this past weekend, the Also Arts Law event.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. It's from 10 to 4. That's how you can tell it's a music industry conference. It didn't start at 8 a.m.
Or go later on a Saturday night.
Or go later. But there was a reception afterwards that ended at 6. And you'd be tempted after sitting there all day long. Like, oh my God, I just want to go home. I want to relax. I've done all the networking I want to do. That's where the best stuff is. Like the presentations are done. Everybody's yik-yakking. People, it's often at a bar, so people have a drink. I don't drink, and you don't have to drink to go to networking events. But that type of informal atmosphere is what you want. You're not at the conference anymore. You're at this informal yik-yak where you've already met everybody, presumably. So that's out of the way. There's no more introductions. That's where the real connection and networking happens. Do it. Go to the reception.
Do it. Go to the party.
Now, those are good, but like, we'll leave on a high note, I guess, and I'll name a bunch of bad things that you should not do at networking events. And if you've done these things, don't feel bad, because they're common mistakes. Some of them not so much. Some of them seem obvious. Some of them should seem obvious. Should be obvious. Let's get into this.
And if you've ever made any of these mistakes, we challenge you to go to a new networking event to make up for it.
And don't do these anymore.
That, obviously.
First one's kind of the segue of moving around, right? Sitting at the back, away from everybody else, not moving. How are you going to meet anybody
if you're standing in a corner on your phone?
Yeah, you know, if I go to a conference or I'm trying to sit as near to the front as possible. One, because you can hear things better. Two, if you have a question, it's a lot easier to get the person's attention. And three, that's what you're there for. You're there to see the presentation. You know, it's not. I remember being in high school and being excited about sitting at the back of the bus, but it's not because that's where the cool kids sat. But that's not the case anymore. Go up as close to the front as possible. Particularly if it's a bigger room and not as many people are there, it's a lot nicer for the speaker to be able to talk to your face. Second, handing out your resume. This is going into facilities, and it happens. You know, like there's been examples in my career of, you know, let's invite some students to this event, you know, so they can meet people, and they're just like firing out resumes. Like, dude, don't do that. Like.
Trying too hard.
It's trying too hard, and it comes back to that 3-touch principle that I was talking about. You're not going to meet somebody and have them immediately trust you. It just doesn't happen that way. Networking is all about meeting people so you can further a future relationship, right? You don't meet your next job boss. I mean, it happens. But like, you're not going to hand out a resume at a conference to get a job because it's gross. So don't. Unless it's a job fair, which is the point. But at a conference, don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah, anyone who does accept you, chances are is a sleazebag.
Might be.
What was it? Like, I remember this. My first ever trip to Canadian Music Week 2 years ago, when they had like a keynote interview with the president of Capitol Records.
Oh, wow.
So then you had a lineup of like independent artists after like handing them their CDs. He's not gonna sign you. Just chill.
Also, like, literally thousands of people would probably hand that guy their CDs at Canadian.
Nice to meet you. Yeah. Sign me.
He's not gonna remember you ever.
No, I heard from the boys that lots of CDs were found in the urinals later.
That sucks. Anyway, don't do that.
Don't hand out CDs or resumes, depending on what your aim is.
What your aim for these things should be is contacts, and people. And the ability to follow up.
Collect business cards.
Exactly. Next, being disruptive. Imagine, like, don't be disruptive, but you would be surprised. This is things like showing up late and being loud when sitting down. Showing up late at a business conference, that happens, right? People have jobs and so forth.
Yeah. Stand in the back. Don't make noise
until the presentation's done, right? Like you go see a play.
Go make like half the middle row move to like get all the way to the middle because that's the best seat, like in a movie theater. You know those annoying people at the movie theaters? Don't be that at a conference.
I've also seen people do things like shuffling paper about while the presentation's on, clickety-clacking, like too loud on their laptop, like watching videos. I've seen that too at a conference. No kidding, like gross. Don't be disruptive. Everybody's there to see an event. You don't disrupt a show when you go see a band. You don't disrupt the speaker. Another thing, a common mistake, you turning the Q&A, which is often the best part of a presentation, turning the Q&A into a soapbox or a self-promotional tool, right?
Oh my goodness.
Which is really gross, right? Like the presentation's done, the speaker's all right. Does anyone have any questions about what?
Yes, I'd like to tell my life story, please.
Yes, please. Here's my life story, and and I'm selling this, and you can come see me. Gross, and it never works ever because no one wants to talk to people that do that. It's opportunistic, and it's not going to work out for you. People want to hear questions relating to the presentation that just happened so they can get more out. Hey, Kitty knows what's up.
Yeah.
Kitty wouldn't hand out her resume
Yeah, be like Kitty. Be like Louise.
Hanging out by the buffet is another bad one. Again, this probably comes back.
Is that correct, Louise?
Comes back to students, I think.
Busted her diet last week.
Oh. She's going to hang out.
She was,
more shrimp?
No, she was opening the treat Tupperware box and then closing it. So they caught her, and now the treat Tupperware is now locked in her carrier.
Sneaky.
Her diet is suddenly working now.
Well, hanging out by the buffet at a conference is bad news. And again, I've seen it. This means two things. Don't bring Tupperware to take home, which I've seen.
I'm just going to load up on the free food.
Also, and particularly at a breakfast buffet, like that's not where you meet people. You say hello, you say, hey, how's it going? You're not trying to pitch people while they're trying to get their eggs.
Or their coffee.
People wake up, let people eat.
Let them drink their coffee.
Let them drink their coffee, and then you network. And the final two, and these are the big ones, so pay attention. Having no way for people to remember you, right? So if you are not ready with some sort of takeaway, so in like this, the typical takeaway is a business card, right? But this could be a sticker, this could be a button, this could be anything, something that the person will take away and remember you. The whole point is them remembering you and following up, right? If you don't have any of those things, that's fine, because you can still be ready with your phone. If I meet Clara and, oh, well, it was nice to meet you. Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Facebook? Let's connect right now.
Let's follow each other on Instagram.
Let's do it right now. Now we're connected, right? There's no need for an exchange of stuff because we've exchanged stuff. Have a way for people to remember you, which leads right into the worst thing you could possibly do, which is not follow up with the people you meet afterwards. And again, seems like a no-brainer, Clara, right? You meet someone at an event, you had a lovely talk, we should talk about things. Okay, and then you never talk to them again. Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Don't squander this.
Don't squander it. The connections are precious, and follow-up should happen quickly. Within the next couple of days, like sit down, like gather up, like typically what people do who are really good at this type of thing, they'll gather up all the information and like business cards and everything that they got during the conference, take time when they get back to the office or wherever, and just literally fire out a bunch of contacts. Great meeting you. Mm-hmm. Let's talk again in the future. That's all you need to do. Solidifies that connection. And if there is a chance for collaboration or business in the future, it's going to happen. If you follow up 6 months later, like they're not going to remember you. And
especially if there's someone who goes to a lot of conferences or who's high up in the hierarchy of like business and sees so many people.
Exactly.
Like you think president of Capitol Records, you really think he remembers every single person who handed him their CD, even if they followed up 6 months later?
Or think about this, if it's someone at that level, like president of Capitol Records, like this isn't the only conference they're going to, right? So if you wait 6 months, I mean, Buddy could have been to 3 more conferences since then, met thousands of people just like you. That'll follow up. So you should too. That's all I got for networking, Clara.
So thank you so much for coming, Joel. Do you want to talk a little bit about where people can find you online? I have the links in the description once again.
Okay.
But you're also, what's the name of your band?
My band is called Jumpin Flash and the Magic Machine. We're playing on Wednesday at House of Targ. The show's from 8 till 11. That's when they shut the music down there. So it'll be an early night because it is a school night, right? Come on out, see some folky fun. You can find us at jumpinjoelflash.ca, where you'll find all of my socials, Jumpin Joel Flash. And shameless, we're raising money for an EP right now. I've got a GoFundMe up, Jumpin Joel Flash on the GoFundMe. Please do check it out.
What's your coolest perk?
Coolest perk is I'll write a song about you.
Ooh.
With your name, but that's a lot of cash. But there's things like private house concerts, free swag, appearing in one of our upcoming music videos as either an extra or a star. Oh my goodness, hiccups. And as well as choosing upcoming Flash Camp Friday songs. I've actually got already 3 people who have chosen songs, so I've got some recording to do tomorrow.
Thank you so much for joining. Thank you all for those of you who tuned in, and for those of you who are going to watch the rerun. And have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. My socials are also somewhere in the video description. Eventually, you guys need to comment if I need to point left or right, okay? Because I do this every single week. And what do you think of the new location? I've upgraded. It's turquoise. So on brand.
Mm-hmm. It's lovely. It's
Thank
lovely.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Clara.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Ah.